We begin today the Gemara on Daf Hey Amud Aleph, about 10 lines down from the top of the Amud, where it says, V'Amar Rab Shmuel bar Nachmani. So the Gemara, V'Amar Rab Shmuel bar Nachmani, Amar Rab Yonasan, Kol ha'isa mitzvah achas, ba'olam hazeh, a person that does even just one mitzvah in this world, mikadmasai v'hilechas l'fanav lo'olam haba. The mitzvah goes ahead of him. When he comes up, his neshama comes up l'mayla. And in other words, even before the neshama comes, the mitzvah goes ahead to notify that this neshama that fulfilled a mitzvah in this world is coming. Shenema, the pasuk says, "V'halach lefanecha tzidkecha." That in front of you, tzidkecha, the tzedakah or the mitzvah that a person does will go. Kved Hashem yasvecha. The glory of Hashem will gather and bring the neshama in. On the other hand, v'chol ha'over avera achas, one that does even one avera, melafafasai or malichasei l'yom hadin. It wraps around the person and comes with him to the day of judgment. Shenema, as the pasuk says, Yilfasai or Yilafsai or Chais Darkam, the Geimer. And Yalu Batoy V'Yevedu. So it's referring to this day of judgment that the Aveda wraps around the person. So you see over here that regarding the mitzvah, it doesn't have to wrap around the person because the mitzvah just goes ahead of the person and the person's happy to allow the mitzvah to come in front of him. By the Aveda, the person wants to try to get rid of that Aveda, but Afal Pikain, it wraps around the person and he can't. That the mitzvah, the Aveda that the person did in this world remains connected to him like a dog that is following a person. Shanema, as the pasuk says, the pasuk says by Yosef and the wife of Potiphar, they didn't listen to her to be with her, to lie with her. What are the two expressions here? Lishkev etzla b'olam hazeh, to be with her in this world. And then what that would cause is also liyas ima b'olam haba, that the Aveda follows the person in Olam Haba as well. Amar Reish Lakish said, this is connected to what the Gemara spoke about before. So Reish Lakish says, Boyu v'nachzik toivel aviseinu. Let us come and give thanks and show appreciation for our ancestors by the Chet HaEgel. That's what the Gemara brought before in the beginning of the Amud over here and the end of Daf Daled. That she'il mali hein, if not for them. And this, what this refers to is the ones that did the egel, they served the egel after Matan Torah, lechatu, if they would have not sinned, so anu lebanu lo'olam, we would not exist, we would not come into the world. Why? Shenema, the pasuk says, describing the Yidden after Matan Torah, that ani amarti elikim atem uvnei elyon kulchem. That I said, the Abisha says that you are all like elikim and all bnei elyon, which means that the Yidden then were like on the level of malachim. And just like Malachim don't give birth, the Yidden then after Matan Torah were like Malachim, they would not give birth at all. But then what happened? Chibaltem asechem, you ruined your deeds, ruined your level that you were on. And then the pasuk afterwards continues and says that Ochen ka'odom to Musa v'goyim, you became back on the level of a man that lives in this world and dies and could give birth. So therefore, the fact that we are here today is only as a result of this that they did this Aveda of Chet HaEgel. Okay, so good.
That's not good. That's good.
Well, here the Gemara says, "Boyu nachzik." We should show them appreciation. Otherwise, they would be like malachim. Okay, the Gemara is going to ask on this. The Gemara is going to give another shot in what Reish Lakish really said. So the Gemara asks, "Remember, should we say the Iloi Chotu had they not sinned by Chet HaEgel or have a mildi, then they wouldn't give birth at all?" But Vaksev the pasuk says, "Va'atem prudavu." That you should be fruitful and multiply. This is the mitzvah to give birth, to have children. Says the Gemara, where does that pasuk say? It's in Bereshis. Ad Sinai. That's until Matan Torah, until Sinai. But after that, they were malachim. They couldn't give birth. In fact, the Gemara, but B'Sinai namik save, after Matan Torah, the pasuk says, Lech amar lehem shuv lechem lo alechem. That to say to the Yidden that they should go back to their tents. There was the Shlosh Yisimei Agbala, or the Prisha also. The Prisha that before Matan Torah they were separated from their wives, and then after Matan Torah, the Abisha says now they can go back to their wives, which means to go back to their wives and they will have children. And says the Gemara, no, not necessarily to have children. L'simchas aina, just enjoy to be with one's wife, but not they were on the level of malachim. They couldn't give birth. In fact, the Gemara B'T Vaksiv, there's another pasuk where it says, regarding what happened after Matan Torah, Laman yitav lahem v'levneim. The Abisha says it'll be good for them and for their descendants. So it says lahem and levneim, that they're going to have children. So answers the Gemara, La'oisa na'oimdim al Har Sinai. It was the Yidden with their children that were there then at that time together with them at Har Sinai, but not more than that. In Fragt the Gemara, but va'amar Reish Lakish himself said, this is Reish Lakish over here that said this statement, but Reish Lakish himself said, it says in Parshas Bereishis, Zeh Sefer Toldus Adam v'Goymer. This is the Sefer of the birth and the descendants of Adam. What does this mean? V'chi Sefer, Hoyloi la'Adam Rishon. Does Adam Rishon have a Sefer? Lamed, so rather what this teaches is, Sheher alei HaKadosh Baruch Hu la'Adam Rishon, that the Eibishter showed Adam Rishon, Doir v'Doishav. All the future generations and all those that are going to expound and learning Torah. And der v'chachamav, all future generations and the sages. Der uparnasav, all the future generations and its leaders. And when Adam Rishon saw the generation of Rabbi Akiva, samach b'Torasai, he was very happy to see the Torah that he learns and he teaches, but v'nisatzav b'mizasai. But then he became sad when he saw how he's going to pass away. He actually was killed by the Romans with a very cruel death. And Omar, he said, "V'li ma yakru reyecha kale the goymer." That so this is the pasuk that he said when he saw what was going to be the end of Rabbi Akiva. Another thing, v'amar Rabbi Yosi, ein ben David ba ad sheyichlu neshama shebeguf. Or another Gersa, I think it's called neshama shebeguf. Yeah, that Mashiach doesn't come until all those neshamas that are beguf is that source, that oitzer that's called guf, that the neshamas are there l'mayla. Mashiach doesn't come until all those neshamas are born and come down into this world. Shenem, as the pasuk says, kilei lo'ilam areh v'lo'ila netzach ektzef. Hashem says, not forever will I fight and be angry, but ki ruach melefana yatov v'neshamas aniyah sisi. There's the ruach that's melefana by the Eibusha, that yatov that's being delayed from coming down, but neshamas aniyah sisi, when the neshamas are here in this world, that's when it stops and the Eibusha brings Mashiach. So you see from both of these statements here, you see from what Reish Lakish himself said, that already by the time before Matan Torah, by Adam Rishon, he sees the future generations of Rabbi Akiva. How could you say that after Matan Torah, if Yidden wouldn't sin, they wouldn't give birth? And Rabbi Yosi says that this is the Neshamas L'mayla, this is the way it's destined to be, that they have to come down into this world, and all the Neshamas have to come before Mashiach comes. So therefore the Gemara changes how we understood what Reish Lakish says. So the Gemara says, Loi teime anu le'banu lo'elam. Don't say that Reish Lakish said that we should appreciate our ancestors that sinned becheta egel, because then we would not be in the world b'chlal. Ella, what he said is, Kimi shalei banu lo'elam. It would be as if we were not here in the world. And Rashi says, what the Gemara means to say is, if they wouldn't sin becheta egel, they would live forever. So if they would live forever, and then we would also be here in the world, but they would be on such a high level, and they would live forever, that our existence would be completely insignificant, that is, in the presence of their greatness. So it would be like we're not here b'chlal. Our existence wouldn't be teifes makim. So that's why we have to appreciate that this happened, and now our existence has a value. Okay, so that's the taich of what Reish Lakish said. But on this as well, the Gemara asks, Lamemre, so shall we say that Reish Lakish is saying, the Ilei Chatu, if the Yidden wouldn't sin, Becheta Egel, Lo Yav Maisi. So after Matan Torah, they got the koyach to live forever, they wouldn't die. But Vaksiv, Parshas Yevamis, or Parshas Nachlis, after Matan Torah, there's the Parsha of Yevamis, a person dies without children, and there's the mitzvah of Yibum, there's the Parsha of Nachlis, inheritance when a person dies. So you see that Torah is speaking about halachas that apply to when a person dies. And says the Gemara al Tanai, the Torah is giving those mitzvahs with a condition. If the Yidden will sin, then things will change and it will apply. But if not, then it won't. Fragt the Gemara, but umiksiv kroi al Tanai. Could you say that these mitzvahs of Yevamis and Nachlis is only on a conditional? It's not a mitzvah that will necessarily ever apply. So answers the Gemara yeah, we see that it could be the Hachi Amir Abshim ben Lakish. Reish Lakish said, when it says the added hey on the sixth day of creation, what does this mean? The Eibusha makes a condition with creation, and the Eibusha says, if you didn't receive the Torah, then it's good, the world will continue to exist. If not, the world will disappear and go back to Toyev Vavayu. So you see that the whole creation of the world and everything, all the mitzvahs, everything, is all in a Tanai. So the same thing regarding these individual mitzvahs of Nachlis and Yevamis and Nachlis is all only on a Tanai. Not necessarily will it apply. Okay. The Gemara asks on this. So again, what the point Reish Lakish is saying over here is that after Matan Torah, they got the power to live forever. So Meisvei, the Gemara asks what the pasuk says: Mi yitein v'hoya levavam zeh lehem. Who would give that they would have this heart? The pasuk there it says v'hoya levavam zeh lehem liyiraisi v'lishmes komet tzaysa kol hayam l'man yitav lehem levneim la'ilam. That it will be good. That's the conclusion of the pasuk. It will be good for them and their descendants forever. Right, the main thing that the Gemara is darshaning is the end of the pasuk. It's Laman Yitav. What is the Laman Yitav? That it'll be good. Levatamem Malach HaMavis. Who would give that the Eibishter would take away the Malach HaMavis that brings death into the world? So that's what the wish over here is. And on this we say that Yefsher. It's impossible that the Malach HaMavis should be removed. Why? Shekvar Nigzera Gzeira. Because there's already a decree from Chet Eitzadas that a person passes away. So what do you see over here? So what is the goodness that the Eibusha says that he's going to give Yidden after the Mekabel the Torah? That the nations of the world will not have any power over the Yidden. That's the goodness for the Yidden. Shenema, that's what the pasuk is saying. So this Braisa clearly says that you can't say that there was goodness that the Eibusha gives the Yidden after Matan Torah to get rid of Malach HaMavis. That can't be. There's Gzeira. What's the goodness? That the guy won't have any control over Yidden. So that clearly goes against what Reish Lakish said, that after Matan Torah, Yidden would live forever. So the Gemara says it's a machlokes. Who the Amak Yehai Tana? What Reish Lakish says is like what a different Tana said. The Tanya Rabbi Yosi. Rabbi Yosi clearly said that lekiblu Yisrael esatayra el kadesh lo yehei malach hamavis shayletem. Yidden receive Torah, and through this, what happens is the malach hamavis has no power over a person, over a Yid. Shenever the pasuk says, "Ani amarti elakim atem uvenei elyon kulchem." The pasuk that Reish Lakish quoted before, that I said that you are like Elakim and you're like Bnei Elyon, you're like Malachim that will live forever. And then Chebaltem Asechem, your actions that you did ruined this for you. Achen ka'adam tumusan. And the next pasuk it says, however, you're now like man that will die. So this is the source that Rabbi Yosi clearly said, exactly like what Reish Lakish said. The Gemara now Rabbi Yosi nami haksiv leman yitav lehem v'livneim ad dailam. So how would Rabbi Yosi darshan what the other Tan and the Braisa darshan that it says that the Eibusha says it'll be good for you and your descendants, and that means toivu davia. The Eibusha says that it'll only be goodness, which is as he said that the guy won't have a control over Yidden, but hamisa eke. But the misa is a gzeire that will never go away. So how does Rabbi Yosi understand that pasuk? And says the Gemara, Rabbi Yosi or the Bach says Amalach Rabbi Yosi, kivin the lakem misa elach toivu gedolim mizu. No, he says when that pasuk says Laman Yitav, it actually does mean that the Eibusha removes death from the world, and that is the Tova. There's no greater Tova from this, that a person lives forever. Now, on the other hand, the Tanakama, the Braise, how does he dash in the pasuk that Rabbi Yosi brought? That here, because Yidden sinned, now came death back to the Yidden. So it's mashma that without the fact that Yidden sinned after Matan Torah, they would have lived forever. So how does he dash in this pasuk? And says the Gemara, "My mise anios." It doesn't mean that when Yidden sinned, that's when the death came back to the world. They would have died anyways because that was a gzeira from Chet Eitzadas. The Misa over here says that after Matan Torah, the Yidden would not have ever experienced anias, poverty. And here, because of their Avedis, there's anias, which is compared to death. Because the Master has said, Arba chashuvin kemesim. There are four that their experience is compared to someone that has no life. And Elohein, Ani, a person that's poor, Suma, blind, a Mitzayre, and Umishen Leibanim, and one that has no children. Ani, D'chsiv, Kimeisu Kola Anoshim, that all the people, this is by Moshe Rabbeinu, when he had to run away from Mitzrayim, the Eibusha tells him to return to Mitzrayim, because Dasan and Aviram, the Anoshim that wanted to cause Moshe to die, that they're gone. And therefore he can return. So man, who are they? Dasan v'aviram. And the Eibusha says that they died. But the question is, Umi, Mesu, did they die? Mehava, they were still alive at that time. Elo sheyardu minachseya. They lost all their money, so they lost their influence, and and therefore they're considered like they lost their life. Suma, where do we see that one that's blind is compared to someone that doesn't have a life? T'chsiv machashakim l'shivani kemese'elim. A person that's in darkness and can't see is like he's mason, like he's dead. Mitzayre d'chsev alma tehika meis. By Miriam, when she was a Mitzayre, so it says there this expression about a Mitzayre that should not be like someone that's a mace. Rachel says to Yaakov, Havali banim ve'im ayin meisa anochi. That give me children, if not, I will die. So it doesn't over here, the Mashra says the diak here is, it doesn't say ve'im ayin, I will die, a lashon osid. Meisa means now. Meisa anochi, I am now like I'm dead if I have no children. Taner Rabbanon, in Habraisa we learned, Im b'chokaisai telechu. When the pasuk says im, what does the im b'chokaisai telechu here mean? Ein im el lashon tachnunim. The im over here means that the Eibishter is begging Yidden to be mekayim the mitzvahs. The Gemara is bringing you here this in connection to the pasuk that was brought before. Mi yiten v'hoyel avavam zeh. That who would give that this should be the Yidden's heart. So over here as well, im b'chokaisai telechu. This is the Eibishter begging Yidden to do Torah mitzvahs. You find in other places as well, this tachnunim, it says, Lu ami shemei li v'gaimer, if the Yidden would only listen to me. And then the pasuk there goes on to say that kamata ve'machniv al-tzrei mashav yadi, then the Eibishter would get rid of all of our enemies. And another place where the Eibishter begs Yidden, Lu hikshaftu le-mitzvaysai, if you would listen to my mitzvahs, v'yihi kenar shleimcha v'gaimer, then it would be only peace by Yidden. And v'yihi kechoyel zaracha v'tetzai meyecha v'gaimer, and you would have many, many children. So this tachnunim, when the Eibishter begs Yidden, it's empowering Yidden. It's giving Yidden the koyach to fulfill Torah mitzvahs. We learned the Maimar about this, if you remember, not long ago. But this im b'chokaisai lashon tachnunim, that because it's talking about b'chokaisai fulfilling mitzvahs on a high level, chakike. So for this, you need a special koyach, and therefore this tachnunim, where the Eibishter is empowering Yidden to fulfill mitzvahs on this level. Taner Rabbanan and Abraisa we learned regarding the pasuk that was quoted before, mi yiten. Mi yitim v'hoyel levavam zeh lehem. The Eibishter says, who would give that this would be their heart, that the Yidden should do Torah and mitzvahs? Amalei Moshe Yisrael, Moshe says to the Yidden, Kfuyei Tova b'nei Kfuyei Tova. The Yidden are kafei Tova. They don't appreciate what the Eibishter is offering them and giving them, and they're the descendants of ones that were kafei Tova, not appreciating. And where do we see the Yidden themselves are kafei Tova? Because b'shal shama Kadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael, when the Eibishter tells Yidden, Mi yiten v'hoyel levavam zeh lehem, hoyel lehem loima. So the Eibishter says, who would give? The Eibishter is sort of offering that who would give that Yidden would have this heart to fulfill Torah mitzvahs. So the Eibishter makes such an offer that he can give this to you. So hoyel lehem loima, the Yidden should have said, 10, give us this kayach. So therefore, 10 ato. Goes together?
Yeah.
Okay. 10 ato, give, the Eibishter should give that Yidden should have this kayach. If someone offers you this gift, and the Eibishter is offering Yidden, and the Yidden are not appreciative and they don't accept it. So, kafei tova, the pasuk says, by when the Yidden got the mon, v'nafsheinu kotza belechem hakloikel. I think the ata goes together, no? Ata kafei tova, no, it doesn't go together? No? That's separate. Okay. Kfuyei tova, so the Yidden are kfuyei tova. Another thing, I guess, you see over here that the Yidden are kafei tova. The pasuk says, v'nafsheinu kotza belechem hakloikel. That the Yidden say that they despise, they didn't appreciate the bread, the mon that they got, that they said they called it lechem hakloikel. That this is it remains in them. They didn't have to ever relieve themselves, and they said that the food is remaining in us, and it's and adarabah. The truth is that this was the greatest goodness of the Eibush, and they didn't appreciate this. So that's where we see that the Yidden themselves were kafei tova, b'nei kfuyei tova, and we are descendants of those that were not appreciative. The pasuk says, by Adam Rishon, Ha'isha Ashenasata Imadi, it's the my wife that you gave me. Hina Salim and Eitzo Eichel. By Chet Eitzadas, he blamed his wife. It's because you gave me a wife. She gave me to eat, and that's why problems began. So he didn't. She gives him a wife, and he doesn't. Instead, he complains and doesn't appreciate this. Now, Af Moshe Rabbeinu leid Omza lehen Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu did not hint to Yidden this, did not make Yidden aware of this, that they were kafei tova ela la'acha arboim shana. Only after the 40 years, and when Moshe Rabbeinu speaks to the Yidden in the Psukim and Chumash Devarim, Shanah, the pasuk says, "Vayilech eschem b'midbar arboim shana." I took you here and led you in the midbar for 40 years. Oksiv, and then it says, "Le'nasan Hashem lochem v'gaimer lev lodas v'nayim liris." That the Eibishter did not give you what he offered that he could have given you. And he did not give you this heart and this level of understanding because Yidden did not appreciate it, they didn't take it. Amar Rabbe, in connection to this, Rabbe says, or Rabbe, Shma, from here we learn, Lekoim inish adaita de Rabbe adar boim shnin. That a person does not understand that's not fully and really understand. Rashi says, Soiv daitoit fenose, doesn't really get to the bottom of what his Rebbe is teaching him for 40 years. Therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu as well does not come to Yidden and explain them that there's something much more here that you're missing, that you didn't get. Only after 40 years, he comes to this realization and he tells Yidden about this. What does this mean? The singing of our Boim Shnin, the Rebbe spoke about this a number of times. The 40 years, it's not just talking about a level of understanding. Because if it would be talking about a level of understanding, there's differences between one person and another, and depends what, depends. This Arbaim Shnin is similar to what it says in the Mishnah Pirkei Yav, has been Arbaim Lebina. It's not just a level of Seichel. There's a deeper level of understanding from the Oimik Kavonis Harav. Rashi says there is Soiv Daitoi, the Das of the Rav, which is beyond Seichel. There's a certain level of connection and understanding that comes by 40 years. What's the meaning of the pasuk where it says Ashreichem zoyrei al kol mayim, that you're fortunate that when you plant on all waters, mishalchei regel asher v'chamoyer, and you send out the feet of the ox and the donkey. What's this pasuk referring to? It's all a mashal regarding Yidden that learn Torah. Ashreichem Yisrael, fortunate are Yidden bizman shaiskim b'Torah u'b'gemilas chasadim, when they learn Torah and also do gemilas chasadim. Then Yitzra Masr b'yadam. Then the Yetzirah is in their hands and has no control over them. They're not in the hands of their Yetzirah. And that's what this pasuk is saying. That fortunate are those that plant on all waters. What does this mean? So there's two parts here. There's the zriyah and there's the water. Planting means that you give tzedakah. You plant tzedakah, and then you can reap the benefits of this tzedakah. And the Eimayim, and then when it says Kol Mayim, so the Eimayim el Torah. Shenem Hoikol Tzama L'chula Mayim, one that's thirsty should go to the waters of Torah. And then when the pasuk says Mishalchei Regel Asher V'Chamayir, what's the connection to this Indian of learning Torah? Tana Devei Eliyahu L'Olam Yasim Adam Atzmai Al Divrei Torah Kisher L'Oil. When one learns Torah, you should learn Torah to the extent that it should be accepted by the person, like a ox that accepts the yoke upon him, and like a donkey that carries a package. So too, when a person learns Torah, there's the ordinary level of learning Torah, but then there's learning Torah with a much deeper connection and bittul to the Torah, which is like a yoke that a person has when he learns Torah. So it's explained about this. It's brought Chassidus about this lashon of oil for Torah. Really, Torah is a mean of seichel, to learn, to understand. But when one learns Torah and connects to the nice not Torah, to the Eibishter and the Torah, so then it's like an oil which the person takes upon himself in his learning of Torah. Okay, this is the conclusion of the Agadata from the beginning of the Masechta. Now, we go back to the details that it said in the Mishnah regarding the halacha of not doing business with a guy 3 days before the holiday that's connected to his Avoda Zara. So the Mishnah said, Gimel Yomim Asa Lasis Velasis Imoim, 3 days, it's not allowed to do business with the guy before his holiday. Okay, so the Gemara asks him this. Now, Umi Be'ino Kulahai. Is it necessary to have that time period of 3 days not to do business with him? Now, Rashi explains the premise of the Gemara's question here is, at this point, the Gemara understands that a person shouldn't sell animals to a guy 3 days before his holiday, for his Avoda Zara. Why? Because what is he going to use those animals for? To take it to sacrifice for his Avoda Zara. So you're being over on Lifnei Iver, and Rashi brings later on. Rashi brings the Gemara. Later we'll discuss simply there's a machlokes later in the Gemara and Davav. But Lifnei Iver, you're being machshel the guy that he's going to take this animal that you sold him for his Avoda Zara. So and on that the Gemara asks, do you have to wait 3 days? But Vatanan, there's a Mishnah that says, there are 4 time periods in the year. You're selling animals to your friend. You have to let him know regarding what animals you sold on that day. Because there's a Isser, allowed, you're not allowed to shecht a mother and the child in the same day. So if you're selling animals, you're selling the mother and the child, you have to let the buyer know that I sold to another person just today, I sold the mother, and don't shecht it today. What are those 4 time periods that you have to notify the buyer? That you have to say, Imo macharti l'shchait, bita macharti l'shchait, I sold the mother and the child as well, both are going to be slaughtered today, and therefore you should be aware of this. And ve'elu hein, erev yom tov achron shel chag, the Erev Yontif, the last days of Sukkot, Erev Yontif Rishon Shel Pesach, the Erev Yontif of the first days of Pesach, the Erev Atzeres, Erev Shavuos, and the Erev Rosh Hashanah, and on Erev Rosh Hashanah as well. Those are the days when when a person is buying, he's buying these animals in order to have meat for the Yontif, and he's going to shecht it today, so you have to notify him. And now, according to Rabbi Yossi Aglili, Af Erev Yom Kippurim beGolil on Erev Yom Kippur, and this is in the Golil of Eretz Yisrael. Over there, on Erev Yom Kippur, there's a mitzvah to eat, but over there in the Golil, they would eat a lot, and they would make a tremendous simcha on this day, and therefore there's a concern that he would shecht, if he's buying an Erev Yom Kippur, he would shecht what he's buying on this day. So what do you see here? Even in a time when a person is buying in order to shecht, it's only on one day that you have to be concerned about this. If you're selling a day before Erev Yom Tiv, you don't have to be concerned that from a day before that to notify him that he's going to shecht on the next day. It's on one day. So the same regarding Avoda Zara. If Avoda Zara is buying a behemah, he buys it on that day of his holiday. You don't have to be concerned from 3 days before. And says the Gemara
about the guy killing the mother, checking the mother.
No, it's a different thing. No.
You bring a right from something that
true. Yeah.
Here is checking the mother and this.
Yeah, but you see that you only have to notify the buyer for that Isra on the same day. So the same thing over here. When a guy buys an animal, you could expect him to shecht it on that day. If he's buying it 3 days before the holiday, he's shechting it before, and he's not shechting it for that Avoda Zara. If he's buying it 2 days before, he's shechting it before. When do you have to be concerned that you're selling him something that'll shecht for the Avoda Zara? If you're selling it to him on the day of the Avoda Zara, that's the day that he's going to shecht it. Okay, that's the raya. So that's a question here. So the Gemara answers, it's not the same thing. Hasam de lachile, when a person is buying these animals to shech, to eat, sagi b'chad yoyme. That is on the same day, he buys it, he's going to shecht it on that day, the mother and the child, so you have to let the buyer know that you shouldn't shecht on this day. But over here, the goyim, they buy the animals and they want to use it as their hakrava for their Avoda Zara, being in tlasi yoyme. For this, you do have to be careful not to sell him even from 3 days before, because already from 3 days before, he's preparing that it should be a perfect animal for the sake, for this Avoda Zara. Now the Gemara asks on the other hand, if you're saying that the concern is that he wants to have his perfect animal for his Avoda Zara, so therefore he has to buy it in advance, so only 3 days. But Vatanan or Vatanya, we learned in Abraisa, Shoylin here regarding this is by a Yid regarding karbanis that are brought in the Beis Hamikdash. So what does it say? That Shoylin be'ilchas Pesach kadma Pesach shleishim yom. That you begin learning the halachas of Pesach 30 days before Pesach. And Abshum Gamliel Mishtei Shabbosis, you have to begin from 2 weeks before Yom Tif. What's the reason for this? So this is Bizman Shabbos Hamikdash Kaim. The main reason why they had to learn the halachas 30 days or 2 weeks before was for the karbanis. When you bring a carbon, there's complicated halachas to know the animal that you bring to make sure that it has no mum and it's kosher to fit to be brought as a carbon. So you see that it's either 30 days or 2 weeks. So it should be similar. Lahavdol by a guy that's buying for the hakrava of his Avoda Zara, he's already preparing for this much more than just 3 days before. He also wants to make sure that it's perfect for his Avoda Zara. And says the Gemara, it's not the same. Anan the shchichi mumin, the pasli, by Yidden when you bring a carbon. So even a mum, even the smallest blemish that passes the carbon. And I feel it bedukin shaba'ayin, even in the eye, dukin shaba'ayin, even in if there's a small eyelid, there's a little mum, there's a problem with this. So being in tlas and yaimin, you need 30 days to inspect the animal to be sure to find the right animal for the carbon. However, by Goyim, the Mechusa Ever Islahu, that the only thing that makes the carbon to be puzzle is if it's missing a limb. So for that, Betlasa Yom Misagi. From 3 days before, they can find an animal that has every limb. The Amar Rabbi Lazar says, Minayin lo Mechusa Ever the Asal Ibnei Noyach. How do you know that by a Ben Noyach that's coming to bring a carbon? So this is already this is the way it is when they bring a carbon for the Eibush and the Beis Hamikdash. But the same is also by them, when they with their own custom, when they bring for their Avoda Zara, that it's only a Mechusa Eiver, which is not accepted as a carbon. Chsiv, because it says, by Noach, when the Chayas and the Behemoths, they all came into the Teva, it says, Mikol Achai, Mikol Basar, Shnayim, Mikael, the Geimer, from all the Chai, they should bring 2 from the non-kosher animals into the Teva. So it says, Lashon Mikol Achai, Mikol Basar. What do we learn from this? Amir Torah, Hava Behema, Shachayin, Roshe, Evarim Shalah. Mikol Achai means an animal that has all its limbs attached and alive. That's what's required for it to be used for a carbon. As Rashi brings, what happens with Noach, the Eibusha knew that after it comes out of the teva, he was going to bring a karbanis from the animals that he brought into the teva. So therefore, it's saying of him in kol achai that what he's going to bring afterwards karbanis should be from the animals that have kol achai. They have all of their limbs in place, alive. In fact, the Gemara, how is that a source for this? That pasuk is teaching something else. That it has to be an animal that's not a treifa. Treifa is an animal that can't live for 12 months because it has some kind of a defect. So that's what it's coming to say. Chai, that it could live. So, Deloy, that if it's a treifa, it can't be brought. But how do you know that there shouldn't be a mechusa evet, that an animal that's missing an aver by a ben noach would be possible? So answers the Gemara, treifa melachayis zera nafke. There's another expression there that the pasuk says that he should bring me oifa shamayim shiva zacha nekeva, and then it says l'chayis zera pnei kol haaretz. So from that, when it says l'chayis zera, that's from where we learn out that it should be an animal that will live and then it'll give birth, and it'll be a continuation of these existence of the animals in the world. That's why they're being brought into the teva. So then from there you know that it shouldn't be a treifa, and there's the other pasuk mikol achai that you learn that it should be an animal that has all of the evarim. So the Gemara asks on this. Let's finish it. The Indian it goes a little bit down in the next Amid. This is a good answer for the opinion that says that an animal that's a treifa that has this defect that it can't live for 12 months, it can't give birth either. So I could say when it says l'chaye zera, it's coming to say that it shouldn't be a treifa. But the opinion that says that even a treifa could give birth. So that's not what you're learning out from when it says l'chaye zera. So So what are you going to say? Answers the Gemara, Omakra itoch b'doimin loch. That when it says in the pasuk itoch b'doimin loch, that he's bringing the animals into the teva that should l'chayes itoch, they should be like you. That means that bring animals into the teva that are similar to you, which means this is the source that you don't bring a treifa, because Noach himself was not a treifa. He was a healthy person, so the animals that he brings into the teva should also be healthy. So this is the source that it's not treifa, so we can still say that umikol achai is a source that it should not be animals that are missing a limb. But how do you know this? Maybe Noach himself did have a defect and he couldn't live for 12 months. Maybe he was a treifa. Says the Gemara, no, it says about Noach tamim ksiv bei. He was a tamim, he was whole. Maybe tamim means that he was tamim in his behavior, in his ways. Rashi says drachav means that he was humble, anav v'shval ruach. Says the Gemara, no, it says, again, be'tamim b'drachav haya. So no, it says another pasuk, tzaddik siv. Regarding this, it already says that he was a tzaddik. So the pasuk tamim is speaking about his physical well-being because it already says about his that he was a tzaddik. In fact, the Gemara, but no, maybe it's two expressions here. Dilme tamim b'drachav. And tzaddik b'maisav. Maybe tamim means in his that he was humble, that in his behavior, that's what drachav means. And tzaddik b'maisav, and then in his deeds. Rashi said tzaddik b'maisav means that he wasn't like all the other people in his generation that was stealing chamas and so on. So these are two different expressions about the ruchnius of Noach. Tzaddik b'maisav, but we don't know where is the source that Noach himself wasn't a treifa. Says the Gemara, you can't say that Noach himself was not healthy, he was a treifa. If Noach himself was a treifa, Amalei Rachmane, Kvasech, Ayel, Shleimin, Loita Ayel. The Eibush is saying Itoch. And Itoch means bring into the teva animals that are similar in their health to your condition. So if you're going to say Noach himself was not healthy, what's the Eibush telling him? Bring animals into the teva that are not healthy. Dafka, the unhealthy animals that have a defect or that are treifa like him, you should bring it to the teifa, but Shleimin, whole and healthy animals should not bring it to the teva. So therefore, when it says Itoch, that's the source that you should not bring to an animal a treifa. You should not bring it to the teva that is an animal that's a treifa, and we have the other source, Mikol Achai, that not an animal that's missing a limb. Okay, now the Gemara says, Navahashta the nafgale mi'itoch, the nafgale mi'itoch, you learn out from the word mi'itoch that a treifa should not be brought into the teva, l'chayes zera lamali, so that the pasuk when it says l'chayes zera, so that's actually extra. So what is that coming to teach? The Gemara explains that's teaching another point. If we would only say me'itoch, it would mean that you bring these animals into the teva, and it should be a healthy animal. It should be an animal that has all their limbs. But who says it has to be animals that later can give birth? Maybe it just means that the animals should be together with Noach to keep him company, to keep him latzafsa, to keep him company while he's in the teva. But vafilis talking vafilis seres, it could be even an animal that's old or can't give birth. So therefore, Kasar Rahman is Zera. The Torah says Zera, that the point of bringing these animals into the teva is that they should be young, healthy animals that they can give birth after they come out of the teva. So we have over here 3 different points that the pasuk is saying. Umikol achai, it means it should be an animal with all its limbs. L'chai Zera means it should be animals that can give birth. And from Itach, it means an animal that's not a treifa. What's the point? The Gemara is concluding here that by Bnei Noach, because when they bring a carbon for their Avoda Zara, the only thing that's necessary is that it shouldn't be Mechusa Ever. So to find such an animal, it's from 3 days before their Avoda Zara, before their holiday. So therefore, from 3 days before, you can't sell them animals that you know that they will use for their Avoda Zara.